Hey everyone, by 2030, your business will either be a fully automated machine or it may even be dead if you don't pay attention to that supersonic tsunami of AI. In other words, right now, AI robots, this is happening now, folks. The systems can think of billion-dollar competitors while you're in your sleep. And by the time you wake up, they've already deployed and are maybe already won. Today, I'm going to discuss with AI expert Brad Hart, and he's going to reveal the Oslo framework to rebuild your sales, your leads, your operations into a self sustaining asset to improve that EBITDA, improve your cash flow, improve that valuation. If you want to stop manual labor leakage and start managing for a high 8, 9, 10 figure exit, this is your blueprint you've been waiting for. This is Doug C. Brown. Let's dive in. Hey, Brad, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Doug, for having me. And thank you for everybody for listening.
And so, Brad, why don't you tell everybody, give them a little bit of background and tell them where you are so we can set the frame for this call.
Yeah, my name is Brad Hart. I run a company called Optimus. You can check us out at buildwithoptimus.com. That's Optimus, just like Optimus Prime from Transformers. And what we do is we help business owners to scale. So 2 to 10 person companies, like they're banging at 30, 50, 100 employees. We build them systems, we build them strategies, and we help them implement AI in their business so that hopefully they'll still have a business once 2030 rolls around, and who knows, right?
Well, you're one of the most intelligent guys that I know regarding AI. And I wanted to have you on here because you are, for better terms, you're taking and AIifying the business and you're helping internal and external communications and processes and everything going on in the business. And quite frankly, I find a lot of people are very confused about what does this mean.
Mm.
So, question number one would be, okay, Brad, what does this mean? What is the future? We're now walking into 2026. You know,
Yeah.
it's no longer like, is AI here, going to stay or not stay? It's here.
Yeah.
So, what are business owners and people, what must they be thinking in order to capitalize on this versus getting caught flat-footed?
Yeah, I think the first thing is more of a blanket global statement is that everything in the digital world is now solvable with AI, and everything in the physical world will be solvable with robotics. Now, is it easy, hard? That's a spectrum. Will it happen sooner or later? That's a spectrum, but it's kind of inevitable at this point that assuming we don't wipe ourselves off the planet, which I don't know why you'd be planning for that anyway, not a whole lot you could do about it. Everything in your business is going to have to transform, or you will not have a business by 2030. That's just kind of the timeline. So I basically help business owners to start thinking about AI in the right way, robotics in the right way, whether they have a physical or digital business. Doesn't matter if you're, an e-commerce shop owner or a content creator or a physical products manufacturer. It does not matter. It's going to affect you. It's not really an industry so much as it's more of a what Elon Musk calls a supersonic tsunami. Right, it's coming fast. It's really big. It's really powerful, and it's going to change everything. And it's going to change everything in ways that are, I think, subtle at first and then inevitable over time.
So let's talk about the change because I can hear people thinking, okay, this sounds fast, right? I mean, we're talking 4 or 5 years, bam, we're here, right? And I remember when the internet came out. I mean, it took 15 years for it really to kind of take hold.
Yeah.
And everybody loved it. It was like, oh wow, we got this noisy dial-up thing that will drop a picture in my screen after 5 minutes. But today people are like, what do you mean it took 60 milliseconds for this picture to come? You know what I mean? Like
Right, right. You'd be
oh,
annoyed if it took if you heard a dial-up tone, you'd be like, "What is that? That's awful." Yeah.
I actually played that for my children actually, who are
You've
in the
got mail.
exactly.
Well, and
AOL, man.
it's
So,
true, man, and it makes a lot of sense. Like if you look at it like plumbing, like the internet was plumbing, and it was
yeah,
driven by humans mostly, and computers that were relatively dumb. Like they were intelligent compared to a calculator, but they weren't intelligent insofar as they could solve their own problems and do so with probabilistic intelligence. And I can define some of these terms if you want to slow down too. But now with AI, it's like using that leverage and using that compute and using that plumbing network that we've already established to now go faster and faster and faster. And every time it goes
right.
faster, it learns faster. And every time it learns faster, it can actually do it better the next time. So you see these types of quantum leaps that you don't expect because humans are trained throughout history to think linearly and locally, but we're moving globally and we're moving exponentially. So, I can imagine a world in 5 years where you're going to see, an AI robotic system think up a company at 9 p.m. when you go to sleep. And by 9 a.m., you have a $1 billion competitor that just didn't exist before. Like wild stuff's going to start to happening, which begs the question is like, where is this all going?
Right.
And I think every economic system for all of known human history, we might have done this a few times before, I don't know, but like, we think of in terms of scarcity as like the defining principle of economics, right? There's not enough to go around, therefore we have to have all these different systems to trade and barter and figure out value and currency and all this stuff. But what if that's not the case? What if the only real bottleneck is human creativity and time? And what if all of a sudden everybody's kind of covered with automations and robotics, having their food, utility, shelter, education just over delivered, right? It's just there's so much of everything that you just literally couldn't um, consume more than you needed, and you would never go without. And that's handled. Okay, well, now what do you do with all your time and creativity? And that becomes the real leverage point. It's like, okay, we start to use these AI and robotic systems to leverage greater and greater good in the world. And I'm not saying everybody will have that incentive or that priority, but really, when you break down, I believe like human society, it's driven by priorities, it's driven by incentive, it's driven by logistics. If the logistics get out of the way, and people start to heal themselves of the trauma that's causing them to maybe behave in certain ways, well, now, okay, time and creativity. What do you want to do with your life? If all your needs are handled, if you're rich tomorrow, and you want to make the world a better place, well, now you have every single tool at your disposal to make that happen. We used to just have to accept the human condition and move on with our lives. If you read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, most powerful man in the world, still had to accept the misery and suffering and problems of his day. Well, a lot of that's going to go away. Now we're going to have massive, massive changes to our existence.
So, it kind of sounds like Westworld, the old movie, right? Like things just get out of control and people are like, oh my gosh, this chaos and, AI is taking over the world. Robots are going to take us over. And I want to kind of dispel some of that myth, right? Because what I think is at the end of the day, even though AI is here to stay, human beings are still making communications decisions amongst human beings, right? So let's take a case study, if you will, or something of that nature. Let's say I'm an HVAC company. I'm a heating and air conditioning company. And I've got 30 employees in the company today. Um, where am I going to use AI in my business? Because man, isn't it? I pick the phone up, I talk to people, we get the quotes out, we do this, we do that. I go and install this stuff. Like, how is an AI application or workflow help me as a
Yeah,
HVAC guy?
that's a great point. And I want to say, first and foremost, you could pick any business, any industry. And I think the biggest problems that most businesses are going to face, and everyone's going to be a little bit different flavor, can be broken down by this framework I came up with. It's called Oslo. Oslo just stands for offers, sales, leads, operations. You talk a lot about sales on this podcast. A lot of that's going to ring true, but like we solve these problems in order because we need to know what we're going to offer, whether it's a physical good or a service or a digital product, whatever it is. We need to know what we're going to offer before we move to like, okay, how are we going to sell it? And then, okay, we got a great offer. We know what it is. We have it kind of well thought out. We've decided what our stance in the marketplace is going to be. Now we have to learn how to communicate that in such a way where, money and goodwill moves from our customers to us, right? Consistently.
Right.
Then, all right, now we got to solve the lead challenge. How do we get qualified, consistent, interested leads coming into our business that we can sell our wonderful offers to? And then finally, okay, great. We got wonderful people buying our products and services. They're super happy with it. Now we want to scale with quality, which becomes an operational challenge. It's like we have to be able to do more of this, but not break the thing in the first place. So then we have to maybe consider different types of offers. We need to consider another way to sell. We have to consider how we can generate even more leads. Like all of these problems are recursively solved. So, you pick the HVAC company. All right, well, they need to generate leads and offer their services, and they need to sell them in a highly effective way that's better than their other competitors. And they have all these levers they can pull in all these different areas, and AI is just one example, right? So instead of a human having to quote every single person, well, they can feed all the outputs and all the inputs from every whatever process they had before of generating these quotes and build a little quote bot. That could be a really simple, easy lift. And I have, it's not this exact industry, but I have a lot of clients, like for example, in the real estate space, constructions, homes, that kind of thing, that are building and redesigning their businesses with AI first. So it's not a human spending hours and hours getting quotes and proposals out. It's like, no, they just go onto a website now, tell people what they want. They make suggestions. They go through a kind of an AI driven process. And then all of a sudden they're getting quotes that are highly accurate and detailed in seconds versus hours. So you're no longer waiting for an RFP and that's going to go away, right? That's just one example. Okay, great. Now it's a few years from now and we start to see some of the open source stuff that NVIDIA is doing come to the market, or we start to see some of these Chinese robots enter the market. But there's no reason that a HVAC service couldn't be delivered by a robot for a much lower fraction of the cost of what it's currently done. And that sounds scary, but that just means you can really service more, right? How many people get their HVAC service once a year because it's overly expensive when really they should be getting it done every 6 months or every 3 months? And wouldn't they pay the same money to have it serviced 4 times a year? If there's still a really hairy problem that a robot can't solve, the person can come in and work on it. So the people still work on stuff, but they do it in intelligent ways. They're not just cleaning it or, taking it on and off and looking at it, that kind of stuff. So like I can think of a lot of ways where robots and or intelligence can start to step into the process.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at even like an industry like car dealerships, right? They make a lot of their money in their service department. That's really a big profit center for them. So, but what people don't really realize is because the cars have been moved to computerized technology, that their mechanics now are snapping, computers onto these computer systems within the car, and the diagnostic is happening instantaneously
That's right.
for these vehicles. So it's
It's just
not
a little
that far.
computer. You plug it in, it tells you what's up. Yeah.
Exactly, right? You're whatever, this valve is out of alignment or whatever's going on, right? And so it's not that far fetched that what you're saying that, hey, you could have a similar system in a trades business like this that is actually looking at whatever. We have a client that I did work for that they inspect the insides of bottles and caps,
Yeah.
plastic, right? Fascinating. But it's not like AI can't do that. They look at the thickness of the material, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What an advantage for a manufacturer who's manufacturing plastic goods, for example, because they have a lot of waste. If you can cut down on waste, now we're improving EBITDA.
Right. Well, and everything becomes a data problem, right? So the
Yep.
companies with the biggest data lake
Yep.
can now use that data in new and exciting ways with machine learning and AI to design new processes. They could design better caps. They could find little tweaks in the materials and how they're built. They can find cost savings. I think the biggest thing that's going to come to market that a lot of the middlemen are not going to want to hear is it's going to be a lot easier for you to collapse the supply chain. And what I mean by that is there's so many human driven deals that are just inefficient and bloated and costly. And I see this in industries all the time where it's like, the lens crafters of the world are making a crazy margin on your lenses, and then
Yep.
Costco goes and does it. All you have to do is just go compare stuff out on the market to what they sell at Costco, because Costco has a fixed margin of between, call it 11%, but they range between like 9 and 14%, and that's very consistent because they're a wholesale club, and that's not how they make their money. They make their money on memberships and having the best deals, really, and they have this insane amount of buying power, and they basically find the best deals in the market and they bring them to their customers. So you can go to Costco and price shop and look at any other industry and see what they're charging: pharmaceuticals, grinding lenses, plants, giant bags of nuts, whatever you want. And you're going to find, oh, there's always margin, and the margin's the opportunity, as Bezos says. So as you're looking at AI and your industry, you want to start to think, okay, if I was going to be the Costco of this, how would I compete? And I would have to do that with intelligence and robotics and automation. There's no other way.
And on the front end, when we're creating more sales, more proposals, more things like that, well, frankly, there's less labor needed, right?
That's
There's
right.
less people needed in that
Yeah.
process. So again, we're improving EBITDA in that process. And as we're improving EBITDA and growing sales, we're expanding valuations of companies. Now exits become more profitable. And you know, here's a question, Brad, that everybody always asks this question. is AI going to eliminate like all my positions in my company, or or is it going to be like, you know, no one will be able to get work, that type of thing.
I think just like every technological revolution from the beginning of human history that we know about, some jobs will go away, yes, and others will come that we don't even know what they are yet.
Right.
I think, again, when you look at individual businesses, I've seen so much value created with stuff that was just being wasted before. So one of the first things that I do when I look in a business is like I try to find the holes in the boat where like they're leaving money on the table and they don't even know it because they just don't have the bandwidth or they don't see it. I'll give an example. I have a client who's making about 1 million a month. Last time I checked in, they're selling services and they're doing it online. They have like a great sales team, but the CEO is making Instagram content every single day and not following up with the inbound Instagram messages. So I'm like, dude, why don't we just build a bot that just puts these into the sales pipeline? And he's like, oh, that's a great idea. So we took 2 hours and we built it. We did a couple other things for him too to help him out and saved him a bunch of hours on the sales side, like getting his sales scored, his sales team and setters teams calls recordings transcribed and scored against their actual process, and
Hmm.
then it would go straight to the sales manager if there was like something that was way off, so they could just focus on those instead of wading through hundreds of hours or missing really bad calls, and that saved them probably hundreds of hours as well. Anyway, the point of the story is we get to dinner that night and we're having dinner at Ocean Prime is in Tampa. And he looks at his phone. He's like, oh my God, I booked 4 calls. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, that bot that you built this morning, it booked 4 calls already. And by Sunday, it had booked another 12 calls. And I asked him, like, dude, well, what's that worth to you? He's like, that's going to generate an extra 10 to 20K a week. I'm like, so you're saying basically self-reported, you had a hole in your boat that was worth between 500,000 and 1 million a year with leads that were already coming in that you didn't have to do any more work for. And you could just put them right into the pipeline you already had. He's like, yep. I'm like, great. Okay, cool. Case study number 2, I have a doctor friend, Dr. Balduzzi. He's great. And he's been doing, blood work and these really long panels and like this really comprehensive system that he's designed over many years being a doctor to get people the little edge in their nutrition, right? To really understand like what's the exact supplements that this person should be taking and how much and all that. And he would spend hours on these reports, digesting them, understanding them, presenting them to the clients. Like it could be 5, 6 hours for a single patient. What happens when you got on board 30 patients? You can't scale it, right?
Mm.
And he's the only person on his team who could do it. But we basically sat with him and kind of built the expert profile and built the prompts that now AI could begin to parse this information. So we built a 4-step process, which gets the report part out of the way in about 5 minutes now. So it went from a 5-hour process to now just the report gets spit out. It's better than what he would have created. It's more accurate. We've tested the crap out of it because we had so many input output case studies. We're able to like basically train a machine to do it. And now he can spend his time working on the patient and just double checking the reports versus actually creating them himself and having to go into the deep end. So, what it used to take maybe 180 hours of work or 200 hours of work could take a few hours of work. And then he's just able to work with the clients. So stuff like that's really valuable.
Well, and he's able to work with more clients at this point,
That's right.
right?
And it just gets better and better, right? It's recursively better. So pretty soon, 5 years from now, it's going to be like somebody walking to work versus somebody driving to work. It's going to be silly to walk to work. Nobody's going to want to do that. Everybody's going to want to do it the new way. It's just some people are now driving, but most people are still walking and they don't realize it yet.
Well, it's interesting because um, we've been parking our vehicle, right? We're traveling right now, and right now there are no human beings at these locations any longer. Like there's literally no human being,
Yeah, it's just
and
a piece of dirt that generates revenue.
yeah,
Nobody
and
lives there. Nobody works there.
so essentially you book on an app or you book online in some capacity. You can even book at the place. The moment you take the ticket, the machine is snapping your license plate. And or prior to you put your license plate number in, you just drive in, hold your ticket up, it read your license plate, lets you in, and it lets you out. There are no human beings whatsoever at these parking garages whatsoever. And there's literally thousands of cars within, a square, mile that are parking in these locations. So our labor costs now just completely dropped. And the customer service is actually even better than it was before because
Right.
if you have a problem, you just push the button and they have live human beings sitting there waiting.
Yeah, and it's probably one guy managing 20 lots instead of, everybody has their own guy managing a lot. So you can
Exactly.
still get the benefit of a human without the human needing to be there. And I don't think the human was generally fulfilled doing that job, sitting in a booth all day,
Right.
right? They weren't getting paid a whole lot. And now it's an opportunity to make it better. Anytime you can introduce more trust into a system and less friction into a system, it's typically a better system. So I like to look at these tools as an opportunity to do that. If we can decrease friction and increase trust, it just makes a better machine, right? And a business, when you break it down at the end of the day, is just a machine that adds value in exchange for money. And the better and more efficiently it can do that, the more profitable and scalable it can become.
So let's take a different business, one we wouldn't even think, I don't know. Let's just take a professional services business. You had
Sure.
mentioned, I don't know, consulting, right?
Great. Yeah, this is actually something I'm innovating in currently. I took on a few clients recently, just to, while I'm developing this platform, it's been nice to have, a little extra income. So I meet with them once a week, and I just brought on a client. I won't say their names because they're private people, but it's a husband and wife. They run a business. They're doing well, and they wanted to, fill some of the holes in their boat. So we're going through this Oslo stuff. We identified some sales and lead stuff they could be doing better, and that's what we're going to focus on first. But what I did first was I'm a geek, right? I think in terms of projects, in terms of code, in terms of like file trees and distinctions. And like I have all these bots that I've created and agents that can essentially write copy or generate documents or, take transcripts. So like I'm able to pull down all of our conversations from Vimeo or Wistia with one tool, grab all that. And I can do that for hundreds of hours of content or just a couple hours of content. And then I can kind of feed it into the machine. And the machine kind of picks out like the best quotes from the session and the strategies and what did we agree to and the action items, just all the crap that you would have had to take notes by hand before. And it just kind of organizes it into the right place. So what you end up with is just a really clean folder. And I do it on the code side, but they don't see all that crap. They don't have to work with GitHub. It syncs right to Notion where they can just see it in a file tree and then they can make edits on Notion or download it or move it anywhere they want or add their team, whatever they like. But it also syncs back to mine because it's their docs at the end of the day. So if they make updates because something isn't clear or they want to add something, I get it back to my end and I can use AI to continue to update it. So consulting now is going to become like this kind of hive mind where it's like, okay, we have this conversation. I write stuff on the whiteboard, but it all gets ingested into the system, which
Hmm.
then creates the playbook, which is ultimately what people want. That's the hardest thing about business is like, why can McDonald's be $1 billion company run by 17-year-olds? It's because you walk into the kitchen, they hand you a manual and it's got every single thing, one, two, three, four, five that you have to do in what order, when, and you can't mess it up. Right. And that's what they do. They have a place called Hamburger University where they train people on these processes. Um, all the owners are trained on these processes. Every employee is trained on these processes, but you have to have the processes first and you have to have them tested and done. So consulting now becomes how do you output a valuable manual for people to run their business while you're, for the 80% that's figured out while you're figuring out the 20%, which is experimental.
Yeah. And so as consultants think, they can package their knowledge now into systems versus just having it
That's
be
right.
reliant upon the human being.
Trust me, I wasn't going to write a giant playbook for every client before, but now it's possible with AI. And I can hit set it and forget it, and I can keep ingesting and updating as time
Yeah,
goes
yeah,
on.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, let's go to a retail store, you
Okay,
know?
great. Yeah. Well, you already hit on a few cool innovations in the parking analogy, right? So
Yep.
you've seen what Amazon's starting to roll out, where you can just walk in, walk out, and you don't have to like talk to anybody. And it's
Yeah.
just, you basically scan on the way in and you grab what you want and it senses everything and it walks out and it just charges your Amazon account. I think that's going to continue to happen more and more. You'll still want to have high-end luxury experiences. So I think you'll have more like have you ever been to a really high-end store where they feed you drinks and you put on clothes that are way too expensive and that whole
Y-
thing? I think it's going to be more like that. Like you go in, you talk with people because it's just fun to shop and drink and hang out and like, have a few snacks and hors d'oeuvres and things. But generally you're like, you're flirting more than you're actually shopping.
mm, mm.
Or you're going to see more like my wife she's a fashionista, but she doesn't want to spend a ton of money. So she does this rental thing. It's called Fashion Pass. And they have a male version too. I think it's called like Trunk Club or something like that. But essentially, you go on there, you put in your size, you kind of pick a few different outfits. They give you like, do you like this more or that more? And then pretty soon it starts to learn your taste. And then you continue to refine and tell it like, hey, I like this, I didn't like that, or this fit me or that didn't fit me. or whatever, and they take care of all the laundry, they take care of all of it. So you basically get a package, you wear the clothes, they're really nice designer clothes for a couple weeks, you send it back, and you keep going. And it's like $200 a month. It's a joke. Like a woman who's going to buy designer clothes is going to spend tens of thousands of dollars a year on that stuff, and it's just going to accumulate in her closet, and she's got to get rid of it eventually. And some of them spend a heck of a lot more than that. What if you could just rent the runway, right? What if you could just have all of it be consistently learning your preferences and make suggestions, but ultimately you drive the bus and you tell it what you like and you get the clothes you want.
So here in Europe, where I am right now, by the way, Brad, you probably should get an affiliate link for Fashion Pass because I assume that that's going to blow up as soon as people hear what you
It's
just
a great
said.
idea and she loves it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I got three ladies in my household, and they're gonna all be going there. I can feel it already. The but here in Europe, unlike the United States, this is an interesting thing in their model. If you rent a car here, you can rent a car by the day. You can rent the car by the month, but you can also rent the car by 1, 2, or 3 years.
Yeah.
And so instead of the car market in the United States, where it's like they rent the cars, then they sell the car, what they're doing is they're giving a lease for whatever period of time on the car here. And Brad, it's all automated. It's crazy how
Mm.
automated it is. So it's one of those things. And by the way, the lease on the car for the year is the same or less than a lease on an automobile for 3 to 4 years in the United States.
Yeah.
So
It's just more.
you can take a car for one year, then go take a new car for another year, and so on and so on and so on. So, and a lot of this is automated to what you're talking about, where they're now measuring people's taste and ideals, and it's like, well, hey, geez, Brad, we have this Lamborghini that just came here. What do you think,
Would you be
right?
into that? Yeah. Yeah. And
Right.
you know, you could do
So,
short term, long term, but it ultimately lowers the friction. It
yeah,
increases the trust
yep.
and it generates more value than if you had a bunch of rental car, drones standing at the line. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying it's like you can do better. Like there are better systems. We just take it for granted. That's the way it's always been done. So we don't think forward as to what it could be.
There are literally two people now. There's one or two at the front gate and two in the service department. That's it over here. I'm fascinated by what they're doing, and I'm always fascinated by what people are doing in business. Um, let's take one more type of company. Um, well, you mentioned the doctor. Let's talk about a dentist. How does a
Sure.
dentist use AI?
Well, yeah, so I think dentistry is going to be really interesting as a niche actually, because I think you're going to see more custom stuff happen that happens before. So like typically you go to the dentist if you have a problem, right? But a lot of people don't realize most of the money in dentistry is actually made with like 3D printing and new teeth,
Yep.
and they call it stripping. It's pretty gnarly. Like they take all your teeth out and give you new teeth.
Right.
Um, Dentures are a big thing. There's another one that's the veneers. I'm just trying to remember some of the terminology, but I had like a friend who had one of the top dental podcasts in the world. Shout out to him. It's a group of guys, shared practices. So if you're a dentist out there listening, you don't listen to that podcast, check it out. But yeah, they talk about these clinics are they're opening them up as fast as they possibly can to do all this like really specified custom work, and all that's driven by imaging, all that's driven by intelligence, all that's driven by customization, and all of these things kind of tie into AI and robotics into the future, which eventually will drive the cost down and make it more accessible to everybody, right? Having default teeth for your whole life is not going to be a thing anymore. Just like having default organs for your entire life is not going to be a thing anymore, right? These
Mm.
things were meant to wear out. We were meant to have a shorter lifespan than we do. And people are enjoying health in their 75, 80, 90s. Like I'm watching Sylvester Stallone at 75 years old going around kicking ass just like he always was. And he's
He
more
looks
ripped than I
great.
am. It's like, what the shit, right? So I think as time goes on, you're going to see people living healthily into their hundreds and, maybe to 150. That's my goal. But they're not going to do it with the original parts. Just like you're going to be swapping out parts in your automobile over time. As they get older, you're going to be able to do that. Now, I've gone particularly deep in this rabbit hole because my mom is suffering from kidney disease and she was on dialysis for years. Now she's gotten a replacement kidney, which is great, but you're trading one set of problems for another, right? She's very immune suppressed and she hits all kinds of weird infections and all kinds of like she just can't leave her house for the most part. So it's like it's really difficult for her. And there's 6 or 7 things that are wrong with the organ transplant industry, right? Everything from, somebody has to die to give you one, to the long waiting list, to the different states having different rules, to the immunosuppression therapy stuff, to rejection of organs, to human trafficking and all the black market stuff that goes on, to dialysis being $1 million a year to keep somebody alive in dialysis. And it's not a quality of life, it's a full-time job. Anyway, on and on and on. What if we could replace people's organs? So I dug deep into this. And I looked into a few different ways we could do it. 3D printing was one option, but I talked to a lady named Doris Taylor. Shout out to her. She had this really cool segment on CNN a while back about ghost organs. She's like, 3D printing won't work, at least right now, because it only prints 4 cells thick. And the problem is you really need a better scaffold. So how do you get around the idea of like, okay, is this scaffold going to take what we need it to take? Is it going to be rejected? Well, you can essentially think of it like a building. Like if you took an old building and tore it down to its studs and rebuilt it, it would be a new building, give or take. They do that with analogs. So like a pig heart is very similar to a human heart, and a lot of the
Right.
organs are very similar. You take a pig heart, you lyse out all the cells just down to the foundations, essentially it becomes a ghost organ. And now you also are taking Doug's cells or whoever cells and growing them in a lab, making them pluripotent stem cells that you can then host on this scaffolding, which grows into a replacement heart for Doug or for Brad, right? So you can have the ghost organs ready to go, you can have your cells ready to go, and you can whip up a new heart or 10 of them in a very short period of time where you would be waiting on a waiting list for 7 years plus.
So this is Westworld, really, when it
This
comes
is pretty
to
wild, right? So this is something that's maybe 10 years and $300 million away. Maybe it's 5 years away. I don't know. But like it's not tomorrow, but it's like on the way.
yeah.
And she's proven it's possible. And it's really fascinating. She's working on it for 20 plus years.
Well, I mean, I just had a hip operation done back in April, and within 2 days, I'm climbing stairs. Right.
Yeah.
Within a week, I'm walking without any assistance whatsoever.
Replacement parts.
And it's like it feels way better than it used to feel, right? And so I don't think that your assessment of this is far off, really, when it comes down to it, because a computer did the operation for the most part, right?
Yeah.
So it's all right. Last question on this, Brad. Well, two last questions. First, let's go to software because people are
Sure.
confused.
Yeah. Yeah.
They think, oh well, software is so simple now. We don't need coders. We don't need this. We just type into this stuff and everything just comes out the way it's supposed to. And so when people are using software, they want to build software, but using AI in the software, how's the best? Is there a best practice that we could share?
Yeah, I'm very deep down the rabbit hole in this.
Yeah.
They have this term called AI psychosis. If there is an AI psychosis, I definitely have it. I spend upwards of 50 hours a week working with AI, sometimes more. That's on top of being a husband and a dog dad and travel and all the other stuff. Like I'm obsessed, right? So I'll spend probably the first 3 to 4 hours, sometimes up to 6 hours in the morning and multiple sessions throughout the day working on this stuff. I'm about to ship a platform that's 3 million plus lines of code. To put that in perspective for people who don't code, that's like Meta has 100 million lines of production code. Google is the biggest code base in the world. It has 2 billion lines. So I'm already 3% of Meta. And I was able to generate most of that by myself by creating what I call code factories. So let's zoom out a little bit and talk about this, and then I'll get into the hyper specifics.
Okay.
If you were to go to high school and learn Spanish in high school for 4 years and then go to Spain, you may not be able to order coffee, let alone have a conversation with a native Spanish speaker. It's just too different, right? But if you show up with a local guide on day one, you go to a pub or coffee shop, and you say, hey, I want to order a coffee. And you see this translator go up to the thing and plop down a euro and say, hey, cafecito, por favor. You can order coffee too. Like it's not that hard, but you got to see it done. You got to like see it in the context. The problem with math and science and STEM is like we learn all this stuff separately. We learn all this stuff. We're not immersed in it. And we don't have a translator who can in real time answer our questions and help us understand, wait, what just happened? Or what do we do next? Well, AI is a perfect translator. It can speak in English or Spanish or code or any other language just as easily as any other language. So you can kind of say to yourself, all right, I want to design X. How would that look? And how can I break it down into the smallest constituent parts to make it happen? So I've essentially trained myself at this point at 40 years old to become a full stack dev and deploy an entire platform by just doing that. And then when I find something that works, I can also create a generator for that thing. So if I want to create a widget, let's say, which is just a code package of something that I want to duplicate. Well, now I can create a generator that duplicates the widget, right? So I can basically take an input, put it in the generator, it pops out an output. I can do that as many times as I want. So I can generate hundreds of thousands or millions of lines of working code based on a model that I had to figure out once. So instead of a tedious process, like the first time I built a server, it was like 15 hours of tedious work. Now I can do them in 15 seconds and it spits out perfectly working code within, a reasonable margin of error. It's 95% there. And then it's a little bit of tweaking on the back end to test. So to answer people's questions, I'm not saying you have to go out and learn how to code, but here are the benefits. Everybody's waiting for the solution to arrive, right? And everybody touts software as a solution. SaaS is a whole big industry. It's billions and billions and hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe trillions of dollars in SaaS. But what it actually does is create more friction. You end up with more tools, more logins, more 2FA, more disconnected pieces of crap that don't talk to each other that were never really designed for exactly what you wanted in the first place.
Right.
And then by the time they actually come onto the market, if they ever do, everybody has access to that. And that company is incentivized to get in as many people's hands as possible because that's the model. So now something that would have been an advantage if you built it yourself to the exact specifications that became a piece of IP that you can then, sell as a part of your company and make your company more valuable is now a commodity that anybody can use. And it's no longer a competitive advantage. Just like one person has GPT, everybody has GPT. Yeah, there's differing ways and people using it and clever and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, if you can create something like what we've talked about today, now it becomes IP for your business. It makes your business more valuable and more competitive. So code is that gap. That's the gap that people have to cross. They have to stop being afraid of code in and of itself. It's not that complex. It is complex. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's less hard than it's ever been. And you've got this infinite translator, Babelfish in your ear, right? That can just answer your questions in real time and translate them. So can we do a video on this podcast or is it just audio as well?
No, video.
Okay, cool. Let me show you something here. So this is the first time I'm unveiling this on a podcast, but this is Optimus OS. It's designed to solve the problem of I've got 50 different tools in my stack. The average SMB has about 87 different tools they use in varieties of different ways. And how does AI use tools? Well, the reality is it does and it doesn't. Like even Claude, which is like the progenitor of AI using tools, which is the MCP protocol, they're not as far along as they should be. It can't use more than 10 tools without breaking the context window. It eats tokens too fast. It's very inefficient. There's context explosions. The context windows are too small. They only have about 75 integrations. They're not tested. They're not proven. They break all the time. They stay broken for months. I'm like, I wanted to solve all these problems. I wanted it to be so that you could talk to any tool that you use in any service, anything with an API, and then talk to it like an employee with natural language and say, okay, cool. Let's do X, Y, and Z, just like you talk to an employee. I want to do this, move this over here, talk to that. And you could do as many different processes in a row. I think I've seen it do up to 37 in a row, call 37 different tools. And then you can also automate that with natural language instead of having to use another tool like a Make or a Zapier or anything like that. So forgive me, this is like me being so close to this in the weeds. I haven't really like described it at a very basic level, but the goal here is to just talk to it like an employee, get what you want done, get the information you need, and then move on with your day. So I just ran a little test while we were talking. And I just said, hey, can you just test some Google Docs for me? I've got a little translator down here. And I just hit go. And it says, okay, cool. I'm going to go test the Google Docs tools that I have. I've got these three. I can create, I can get, I can update, and I can batch update, right? And then it just tested the tools. It returned the response to the tools in both human readable and JSON format. That's just a JavaScript object, not a big deal. So you see it ran the tools. And then it got success and it actually created me a little document with a little test message in it, right? So I didn't go out of this window unless I wanted to. I can click on the link and it went and did all that, right? So you can start to think to yourself, okay, well, what else can this thing do? Well, so far we've connected it to all the Googles. All right, I'll show you in the back end here some of the connections. So I can do anything across the Google suite. It'll load up here in a second. It just takes a second to figure out what it's got. Okay, so I could look at analytics data, calendar, docs, drive, forms, Gmails, photos, search consoles, 141 different Google services. And it took me 50 hours to figure it out, but now I can connect to all of them. So that's literally tens of thousands of tools we can use, right? Then I can add ones with API keys too. ActiveCampaign, Airtable, Apollo, Asana, ClickUp, Cloudflare, Discord. We've got 206 of these now that are working. And I built a little factory that just churns them out. So you say, hey, I want to connect to this one. I can just spin it up and test it and put it in there. And then I can say, okay, great, go ahead and automate that on a regular schedule. And it becomes an automation. So now every day, every minute, every hour, every week, every month, whatever, we could just have it run again and tell me what happened. And it'll tell you again in natural language, as far as the tool calls and the raw JSON. So you can use it again and again and again. It can listen for events eventually and begin to build really complex workflows. But you basically talk to it like an employee. It executes what you want, and then it can do that again and again and again. Set it and forget it. This is how a 2 to 10 person company becomes a 100 person company overnight.
And this is where I wanted to go on our final question. It's like, okay, I understand what you're talking about. You understand what you're talking about for sure. But I have a techie background too,
Mhm.
right? So let's zero out a bit and just last question. I don't have a technical background. I don't really understand what AI. I mean, I got the concept now. Look, it will do some internal stuff for me, some external stuff for me. Sales, Oslo, right? It'll do these things. But how the hell do I begin? Like, what
Yeah.
do I do? Right? I mean, besides call Brad or maybe call Brad, right? What do
Yeah,
I
and certainly
do?
that's an option. You know,
Yeah,
if people are like, "Hey, where do I start?" and I realize this is important, and I just want to throw money at the problem, well, I'll happily accept your money and start installing this stuff in your system, provided it's a good fit. But short of that, and I only have so much space for that. I think the first thing to realize is that everything that you think you know needs to be reevaluated. You cannot just rest on your laurels and say, "Hey, we're in a good place and we're just going to stay here." Because in 2 years, somebody's going to redesign the entire business model you currently enjoy, and it's gonna grind you to the dust. So that's like the first thing is like recognize that everything's now different and everything's now possible. What I just showed you is going to eat any employee that makes less than 50 grand a year.
so Brad, pause right there because I want to tell people like you're a guru doing this, right? I'm capable, but I'm not you by any means, right? But I want people to understand something. I was able to take like sales assessments. Like the majority of sales assessment companies look at their sales assessment, recreate their sales assessments, and it took me less than 3 hours to come up with a fully baked sales assessment that is as good as any other sales assessment out there. And I added things that people don't have in their sales assessment that I know that people who want to hire salespeople, top performers, would want. It took me 3 hours. A guy like you probably take you 35 minutes, maybe an hour, right?
It's all about the
But
data and the experience. You got to still have the taste and the discernment and the experience to know what good is. But once you know what good is, it's really easy to get there.
right. So, but this is where I want people to understand. This is here. It's coming. You've got to be able to think like this. And then if you don't want to do the techie side by yourself, guys like you, Brad, very capable in doing it. So how do they approach this? Like if they want to do it themselves? Because I can say what I would do. I do the back end research. I look at things. I say this is what I want to do. I build a plan out. I roll it out, and you know, um, but where does the person like? I own a company. Let's go back to the HVAC guy, right? Or gal. 30 employees. I'm doing I don't know 9 million a year, right? That type of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, what do I do? What's my next step? I mean, they can go to buildwithoptimus.com,
We got trainings on
you
there.
got
You can
training
check
on there
that
forward
out. Yeah,
slash
if you just go
training.
forward slash trainings, there's some stuff you can learn some of the basics. I tend to throw people in the deep end and teach them how to swim versus just dipping their toe in the shallow end. So if
Yep.
you're looking for training wheels and prompts and stuff, there's tons of people doing that stuff. Yes, we'll do prompts, but that's like we want to get past that as quickly as possible and just start to talk to AI like we would talk to an employee or an assistant or somebody who's like a human because it's getting there, right? It's
Right.
not perfect, but it's getting there. And your job is to really guide and ask questions and make sure it doesn't go off the rails and hallucinate something, right? Because it's going to take what you say and it's going to interpret it, and it'll either interpret it 9 times out of 10 exactly as you said it, or one time it's going to go wildly off the rails and you got to catch it. So it's just,
Right.
watching it, I think, and making sure it doesn't do that. And there's not a lot you can break, as long as you're not dealing with other people's money and other people's data, like go nuts, have fun, just enjoy. Like I get so much pleasure and joy and childlike wonder out of like messing with this thing and seeing what it can do. So that's my first thing. But yeah, I think checking those resources out is a good idea. I have a client, his name's Glenn. Shout out to him. He runs a janitorial business. He's been in the game for a long time. He had 1,000 janitorial franchisees at one point. But he's 72 years old and he's diving into the AI thing hard. He's understanding it. He's getting his team on board. I put him through the first version of this when you had to like install it with command line prompts, and it took an hour. And he's a champion. He got through it. Like, it's never too late and it's never too early. Like it's planting the tree 20 years ago thing. But you got about 4 years, so you better start now. Because these systems are going to get better and better, and they're going to understand reality better and better, and that's just going to keep compounding on itself and getting faster and faster.
And Brad, I want to challenge that last piece. And then here's the thing. You have 4 years till it probably peaks, right? It's already here. It's already started. Like in a year, 2 years, I, folks, just it's happening. It's and this is not like doom and gloom or oh my gosh, if that type of thing. This is reality in what's happening in the market. It's happening now, and in a year it'll be a lot better than it is, and in 2 years it'll be better than it is. And
One way to say that is the worst it's ever going to be is today.
yeah, it's a great way of putting it, Brad. I agree. Brad, how do people get a hold of you? They want to touch base
Yeah.
with Brad directly.
Go ahead, fill out. There's an app on buildwithoptimist.com, and you can check us out there. I'm also available on Facebook, although I'm not doing a lot of social media these days. I've been historically very active on Facebook and social media. I'm less so now, but I'm just facebook.com/Brad Hart. And I think this year I'm going to come out of my cave a little more and promote what we're doing, because now it's like in a pretty stable place where I feel good about other people using it. Before it was just like, actually, we need people to use it because we have so many tools. We have like 20,000 tools we built for this thing. That's not an exaggeration. It's 260 services we've integrated. So now we just need people who actually have the keys to the tools and that they can like test them. Hey, this one works, this one doesn't. One cool thing we built, Doug, which I think is innovative, I'm not sure if other coders do this, is every time a tool fails, it goes into a special window where it tells us exactly where it failed, what code to look at in the stack, exactly what, where to hunt for the bug and fix it. And it
Oh, wow.
debugs right in the window. So as you use the platform, we'll get the errors and we'll fix it for you in real time. You won't have to submit a bunch of bug crap. So, oh, this thing broke and I have to recreate it. No, it's like, I know it broke. We're getting to it. Just give me a minute.
That's awesome.
So that'll be really fun too.
Well, Brad, thanks so much for being here on the CESO Strategies podcast. I know there are people right now going, okay,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's the intent that I was hoping we would have here during our conversation. So thanks
It's a
again for
little
being
mind
here.
blowing. Yeah, it's my pleasure. And I'm, like I said, I like going in the deep end. Don't be afraid. You won't drown. I'll keep you afloat.
All right, we just covered why your business model is currently under attack by that supersonic tsunami of AI. Now, folks, it's here. All right, so, here we are in 2026. You've got some time. You can put forth and actually put this in play now. If you don't, I promise your competitors are going to do it. There are already people who are creating these AI type processes and agents and all kinds of stuff's going on where you're going to start seeing this come into full force as Brad and I discussed. I'm seeing it now in car parks and grocery stores and all kinds of things. You're starting to see this happen. And if you realize your current operations are too slow to survive what's going to be happening in 2026, 7, 8, 9, and certainly by 2030. And if it's too slow to survive that, you don't have a tech problem, folks. You have a valuation strategy problem. Now, I want to help you and audit those systems. I want to help you with those 21 levers that drive cash flow, EBITDA, exit valuation, and I want to take into account your AI readiness. So, if that's something you're interested in, the first step to stabilizing those margins and securing that exit that you're looking for down the line or the cash flow, whether it's operational or post-tax cash flow, reach out to me at Doug at ceosalesstrategies.com and let's schedule an appointment to go through an assessment to figure out where you are and where you want to go and what's the delta in between. All right, I'm Doug C. Brown. If this episode gave you a 2030 wake up call, share it with another founder who's still walking to work. And while the rest of us are driving and soon maybe even self driving cars. I'll see you on the next episode. To your success.